If you walk into the Masjid and you start talking to your fellow man, the Imam says, stop talking, this is the house of Allah. If you walk into the classroom and you talk to your fellow student, the teacher says, stop talking, you're here to study. This is a classroom. If you walk into the workplace, your manager or your boss says, stop talking, you've got work to do, you're here to work, you're not here to mingle, you're not here to socialize. If you go onto the subway, you go onto the tube in London and you speak to your fellow passenger, they just give you a weird look. They just look at you as if you are asking for their kidneys or something like that. Most parts of society that we are in, most institutions that we are participating in, are not really allowing us to socialize. We're not really getting to know the other fellow man. It's kind of just something that we do on the side. This is very, very common in Western societies, where there's something that's always distracting us from getting to know our fellow human being, whether we're on a bus, whether we're on the tube, whether we're in the classroom, whether we're in the workplace, wherever we are. Something's always taking us away from it. And what that actually does is it actually prevents bonding. It's 2024 now at the time of recording this video. We're living in a time where human beings are very little bonded to each other, especially after this major event that took place in our lives over the last few years. The isolation that we all experience has just made that even worse. And we're not bonded to each other. Yes, we're speaking to each other on WhatsApp and we're speaking to each other on social media, but that is not bonding in the same way. Being in the presence of a human being and allowing those hearts to connect is a very different experience to just sending them messages over WhatsApp or over Facebook. Even video calls cannot beat that, because the heart has a particular energy to it and there's a certain vibration. And when you're in the presence of somebody else, you can benefit from, if there's love that they experience for you, you can benefit from that. First of all, it's really affecting our mental health, if you want to call it that. It's really affecting our emotional states. Everybody's emotional state is very low right now. It's because we're not really bonding with each other. And this event that took place actually just made those habits a lot worse. But it's also because these institutions are taking up so much of our energy and they're distracting us so much. They're intervening in our ability to socialize with others that, we haven't built the habit and the practice of bonding and socializing with other people. The practice of going into other people's houses and just hanging around with them has gotten a lot worse now as well. It's not the done thing as much as it used to be before. It's a lot more expensive to go out and socialize in restaurants in large numbers as well, just because of the state of the economy. There's nowhere really where groups can come together and just kind of hang out with each other. There are places where people are hanging around, like concerts and places like that. But there aren't that many places anymore, institutions, where people can just come together as groups and just mingle with each other and just sit in the company of each other and just get to know each other and just enjoy each other's company. It's not happening anymore. And I think this is where non or underdeveloped economies actually do a lot better. So in the continent of places like Africa, countries that are within Africa itself, a lot of the institutions are not that developed, and so they don't actually have the power to intervene as much. And so people they're forced to actually work in groups, they're forced to actually work together and help each other. And that actually creates a lot more bonding and actually does away with a lot of things like psychological issues and depression and all that, because it's just a company of other people. You'll notice this, there are actual videos floating around in so many other places. And so it's almost it isn't almost, it really is actually a caveat in having so much institutional power in the West, where the institutions, though we are dependent on them and they're helping us, they're giving us infrastructure and they're giving us water supply and they're giving all these things, what it's also doing is it's making them dependent on them and not dependent on each other. And that is affecting our mental health. It's affecting our ability to really just get to know each other and learn from each other and progress in that way as a society. But I do think now, especially with the way that the world is changing, and I think a lot of people are fearing the economic collapse that's coming, the financial apocalypse that's coming, what I do think is that there's something good to come of it, which is our chance to not have to depend on the state, but to depend on each other. And I think that is going to lead to some really, really amazing things. And that's why I don't really fear the financial apocalypse as much as other people do, because I think there's a lot more meaning to be found